Hey guys, yeah, we're just gonna wrap this up. Last I left you guys, I kind of left on a cliffhanger. I had said that my sister knew who was responsible for my abuse. We're not gonna go into detail as to how she knew, but she knew. And she said his name, and I confirmed it. And I think that first night was like the most difficult part of this whole entire healing process, because the emotions were so high and so fresh, and everyone was processing it a different way. And I'm gonna be honest, my dad didn't react the way that I guess I was anticipating. He was very calm, he wasn't very angry or emotional really, and I think that really broke me, because here I was like breaking down and having the worst day of my life, and then to see how stoic and calm he was, I guess made me feel like he wasn't there for me, which I know isn't very fair, because I know we all process like grief or shock differently, but that created a rift in my family where we just couldn't understand why he wasn't reacting the way that we were. Gathering with like all of my aunts and uncles and whatnot to discuss the issue, and like I don't want to give away too many personal information, but we end up finding out that it wasn't just me who had been hurt by my cousin. And so we go to the police, or we call the police, we make a report, and the timeline's a little fuzzy here. I really can't remember exact dates, but sometime after that, we went to the police station, we gave our statements, and the legal battle kind of began from there, which ended up taking, I'd say that maybe 2.5 years. Essentially, my family broke up into like two parts. My grandparents chose his side, and that was like really one of the last times that I had a relationship with them. I remember the reaction and my grandpa saying like, why would she bring this up now? Like, why is she causing trouble? I don't know, it was devastating, you know, it was all of my fears realized. Everyone in my family looked at me different. My grandparents are blaming me. You know, my family essentially just separated, and I haven't seen a whole section of my family ever since. It was very difficult to carry that guilt that my dad couldn't be with his parents because he had to choose sides. You know, I blamed myself for a little bit, and then I blamed everyone else for everything. I was so angry. And this was all within the time of me like entering high school, so you can imagine what that was like. And I remember feeling this wave of almost courage amidst all my sadness, because I felt like, well, that was like my purpose, was to be the first one to come out, because then we found out that there was multiple people being hurt, and honestly, like, that inspired me to be almost like the advocate and to pursue this and to bring him to justice, really. And so that's what kept me going. But I was suffering from crippling depression and anxiety. I was suicidal essentially that entire span of time. Felt alone all the time, and like I just didn't feel right. I felt broken for a very long time. and I grew resentful. I became a very angry person during those years. I basically was convincing myself that like no one understood me or no one knew how I felt, and that no one could really be there for me, so why like have these fake friendships and relationships and stuff. And it's around this time though that I meet Mia's father, and I start dating him, and that's kind of helping me to distract myself. But so those first couple years of high school were really rough. So on top of my depression and my anxiety, I started to develop unhealthy eating habits, or an eating disorder, because I guess I didn't like who I was on the inside and the outside. It was a very difficult time. So my health was spiraling. I was eating one meal a day. Like, I would starve myself. I would skip meals. I'd work out. Like, I'd purge myself, essentially. Like, I wouldn't throw up, but if I felt like I ate too much one day, I'd go and skip a couple meals the next day, and I'd work out harder. And it was just not a good time overall. And my depression was starting to eat away at me. And I attempted to take my own life. And I began to self-harm. And I don't really know why. Like, I try to reason with myself why, but I felt hopeless. And then sometime during the investigation, I find out from people at school that several people had been approached about me, and that they knew about the case. That essentially my cousin and my grandparents were interviewing people, asking them if I was promiscuous, or if there's this possibility that I was doing this for attention. So people started to find out, and it spread. Like, a lot of people ended up finding out about what had happened to me, especially because I had came out during summer camp, so a lot of people knew. And I felt even more isolated. And it weighed a lot on me. Imagine what it's like to be a teenager, just a teenager in high school, and then to have everyone know that something like that had happened to you. And I think what really made all of this very difficult is that I wasn't receiving the help I needed at the time. And like, looking back, I don't blame my parents for their concern, but I had asked my parents if I could go see a therapist to seek help because, well, I was suicidal. And my parents discouraged me from going to see a professional because they're afraid that it would compromise my ability to get a job later on in life. And they're fully supportive now. You know, they understand that that won't play against me now, but at the time they were very worried about that. So I had to deal with it alone, virtually. And like, of course, my mom was always trying to be there. She just didn't know how to, and I didn't want to keep coming to her for it because I knew how hurt she had been. She blamed herself too for a really long time for not protecting me, even though that's ridiculous. There could not have been a more protective mother than my mom. And in this time, me and my dad don't really talk. My relationship with my father was strained because of how I perceived his coping with the situation. He just wasn't there the way I needed him to be. But really, that was everyone. It was difficult. I come back from school one day and my mom tells me that she had gotten a call and that she had agreed on a plea deal, which took nearly 20 years off of my cousin's sentence. But for a time I was angry because I wanted to go to trial. I wanted to have that closure of facing him in the court and telling my story. And I felt like she had taken that away from me, but I understand now that that was the best, if not only thing that she could have done. He could have gone free without consequence if she hadn't taken that deal. And so I'm so thankful for how much my mother cared and how she had supported us through that entire time. And I feel really bad because for years I was upset. And I feel like I got my closure taken away from me. So we go to trial and I get the opportunity to say a couple words. And I remember having this single paragraph typed out and reading it in front of my cousin and everyone at the court present that day. And I remember just being filled with anger. I know people say that forgiveness is like a road to healing, but all I could process was anger. And I said I didn't forgive him, and that his punishment would be to live with this decision. I truly felt like he and I would suffer from his decisions for the rest of our lives. After we finished in court, I felt like my purpose was fulfilled. I felt like there was nothing left to stay for because I didn't want to suffer anymore. I had held on for so long because I felt like I was doing something good with my pain. And when it was over, I felt like there was nothing good that could come from my pain anymore. So I didn't want to feel it. So I tried to kill myself. And it was so selfish, I didn't even try to leave a note. I just wanted to be done. I was at this low point in my life. I even convinced myself that everyone else would be better off without me because I felt like I was permanently damaged. even to this day, you know, I have a hard time processing and handling my emotions. I didn't want people to have to keep taking care of me. So I drank a lot of pills. It didn't work, obviously. But that was the last time I ever tried to commit suicide, because just a month or two later, I found out that I was pregnant. And that's what saved me.